My name is Petrie, and so far at least, I have read 23 books this year. I know this is not a ton by a lot of people's standards, but it's pretty good for me considering everything else that's been going on in my life. So I'm going to try to make this quick. If you want a little more information, there's a link to my Goodreads in the description. The first book I read was Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd. I grabbed it because it was on the new shelf at my library in the YA section, and it's a fantasy, sort of. So I would recommend it to anyone who would like to believe that there's a strange magical underbelly to the world that we are just not noticing most of the time. The second book I read was Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I did really enjoy it. I know a lot of people rave about it. I did really like it. I did love Kaz Brekker. Everyone said everyone loves Kaz Brekker. I guess I didn't get excited enough about it to pursue the series, and I just read that one. I will read the rest of them. The third book I read was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I got totally caught up in it. It was so all-encompassing and gorgeous and rich and twisted, and yes, Stockholm Syndrome and is this an appropriate relationship kind of romance. Is it problematic? Maybe, but it was luscious and I adored it. And then as soon as I stepped out of that world, I guess I was ready to move on. I would recommend it for anyone who is open to twisted romance. The next book I read, I also just read the first in a series and dropped it. It was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. It felt light. It felt like, like an older middle grade book or a really young YA book. At the time, I realized that's because I read it right after Six of Crows and A Court of Thorns and Roses, which are dark and at times a little explicit for YA. So I did enjoy City of Bones. I thought it was really fun. And I did get caught up in it while I was reading it, but then I guess I was willing to put it down. Although I would strongly recommend it, and I don't know how much more mature the rest of the series gets, but for somebody who is making the leap between middle grade and YA. Next, I read Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and it was fantastic. It was so much fun. I don't read a ton of contemporary, but this one was just sparkling and gorgeous and strongly recommended to anyone who is or was an LGBTQIA plus teen. After that, I had my only DNF for the year. It was Steeplejack by A.J. Hartley. And I am a mom. There was this new baby in peril kind of storyline that it was making me so anxious. I just could not finish it. So if that is not upsetting to you, it's a very cool fantasy that feels very real and is inspired by South African culture and is a little bit industrial. It was very, very cool. But yeah, Baby in Peril. Next, I read Princess Ben by Catherine Gilbert Murdoch, and I loved this because of the language, which was very formal and yet also very snarky and funny, and I love that combination. So just linguistically, it was a delight to read. This sort of book where you stop to read aloud a particularly sparkling sentence to whoever happens to be in the room with you. And so if you know anyone who loves those sorts of books or language for the sake of language, I recommend Princess Ben. Also, underestimated girl slays dragon. Pretty awesome. Then I read Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell. I was very excited about it at the outset, and then it seemed to go on for kind of a long time. I didn't love how much the romance arc took over in the second half of the book, and really just wanted to know about her fanfic. I would say I would recommend it to anyone going off to their first year of college soon, anyone who has dealt with the mental illness of a parent. I felt like that was handled really beautifully in this book. And absolutely anyone who writes fanfic. So because I was so caught up in the fanfic aspect of that book, I did go straight to Carry On. I kind of only read Fangirl because I knew I really, really wanted to read Carry On. And it was great. It was so great. This is the fanfic that a book character wrote trying to preempt the release of the 8th book in the series that she was writing fanfic about. So it's the end of the series, but it's also the fanfic version, but it's also of a fictional fandom. And I just, the first page, you're like, how do I wrap my brain around this? And then, boom, just in it. Don't care anymore. Where did this come from? How many worlds am I stepping through to get here? It was just so great. So fun. And I would recommend to, again, anyone who is or was an LGBTQIA plus teen, and anyone into fan fiction or specifically Harry Potter. It was such a delight, and I'm really looking forward to reading Wayward Son next year. Then I took my deep dive. I read The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater, and that was the one. That was the one that I got super excited about the series. I read the first book in a lot of different series this year, and this was the one I just had to keep reading. I love where you can't tell whether the magic is here or there, or where exactly the line is in between. The blurring of the magical reality and the mundane reality. It reminds me of Isabel Allende and stuff like that. So for anyone who you think would read Isabel Allende, but maybe also reads YA fantasy, I cannot recommend the series highly enough, and I just could not stop. But I kind of had to stop because I was beta reading for Emily Bourne, so the next thing I read was In a Mirror, and it's so great, especially right now when I'm feeling so miserable in this terrible cold here in Vermont. It's an Australian beach vacation for, $15 or less if you just wanted the ebook. I wish I had a copy of it here to hold up for you, but mine are still in the mail. I have ordered this for 2 of my nieces for the holidays. I strongly recommend this book for anyone who thought that Fangirl dragged on too long and didn't have snappy enough pacing, or anyone who wasn't pleased with the fact that Fangirl only showed one of the twins' perspectives. I would recommend it for anyone who knows, loves, or is a twin, and anyone who is dealing with contemplating issues of consent in a nuanced way, or anyone who likes books where the teenagers act like real teenagers and not like either, the real hardcore, dangerous kind of teenagers that we maybe imagined other teenagers were when we were 17, but In reality, we were all just fumbling around. Or like the two perfect teenagers who never make mistakes or suffer any consequences that you see in some books. All of the characters in Emily's book are so real, so believable, and the kind of characters that you will just carry with you. I have found myself thinking a sort of, I wonder what they're up to now kind of thought, as though they are friends that I haven't spoken to lately. So you will really, really care about not just the main characters, but the rest of the cast too. I strongly recommend In a Mirror by Emily Bourne. And also, if you wanted to make it a cool gift package for somebody, check out Emily's channel where she always lists links to her merch store. So you could buy a gift to go along with the book, which would be absolutely delightful for someone. So then I got a little bit distracted before going back to Maggie Stiefvater, and I read this. I happen to have a copy because I insisted that my teenager check it out from the library recently. So most of the books that I read this year were library books. The Darkest Part of the Forest, I did do a video about a little incident where a weirdly specific detail from this book that I read in July was a very close parallel to something that I wrote in the book I was drafting in April, May, and June. A jump rope rhyme about the local fairy folklore. Weird detail. Anyway, this book was like if I had been able to magically special order the book of my dreams, but I didn't know how to ask for it, and then here it was. So it's dark, but not heavy. It's the kind of book where you suddenly realize how far into it you have gotten and you want to slow down so you can savor it, but you can't make yourself stop. So, scary fairies and really, not just like plucky heroine, but badass. Really, really great, fun characters, and this feels like a world that you have always known was there and just couldn't quite get to. So then I did go back to Maggie Stiefvater and I read The Dream Thieves, which, if anything, was even better. Delved into a character that I really enjoyed and got deeper into the magic, and it was just so much fun. And then I sent my teenager to the library to get me the next one, which is Blue Lily Lily Blue. And my teenager held it for ransom until I read something he recommended. So I read A World Without Heroes, which was a Beyonder series book #1 by Brandon Moe. So is that my first actual middle grade? Again, it's like older middle grade. It's got some torture and some futility. Some bits that are a little heavy, a little hard on the heart, I thought, for middle grade. But compared to YA, a little light. It had just very much a sense of adventure and flow and great pacing and lots of little steps along the journey that require resolving in creative ways. And so very much a epic little hero's journey quest type of book. I did enjoy in particular that this was straight up portal fantasy. I would recommend to anyone who would be into that, or the hero's journey type of book, but maybe isn't going to wade through Tolkien yet. Something faster paced. So then I read Blue Lily, Lily Blue, which just got weirder and more intriguing. And I got to the end of it and I just, oh my goodness. Yeah. But I had gotten some other things from the library too. And so I read The Cold Is in Her Bones by, is it Peternell Van Arsdale? A small book, but kind of high impact. Demon possession and this beautiful, lovely fantasy I feel like was a little bit German inspired, maybe the names of the people, and so it felt a little bit like fairy tale realm. For such a small book, it was kind of heavy and had a resolution. It leaned more towards sweet than a straight balance of bittersweet, but it was a thoughtful, thought-provoking conclusion, not just a simple happily ever after. And then I read The Hidden Oracle, which is Trials of Apollo Book 1 by Rick, no consensus, Riordan. Anyway, nobody knows how to pronounce it. Everyone knows who he is. And so fun. If you've read any of his books, you know how his main characters can be so snappy and snarky, and Apollo is that, but also this raging out of control ego, which is just hilarious. He's a really fun character. And so I would say it is more along the lines of the second Percy Jackson series, the later books, and very much an older middle grade read that I would recommend to anyone who has read any of his other stuff but hasn't gotten to the Trials of Apollo yet. There are now 4 books in this series, so I have some catching up to do. And then finally I read The Raven King, The Last in the Raven Cycle by Maggie Stiefvater. And so yeah, just buy all 4 for someone you really love who loves to get caught up in weird magical mysteries. And then it was NaNoWriMo, and I did not want to read any more YA fantasy. So I decided it was Mystery Month, and I picked up something hilarious at the library just because it was called The Revenge of the Wrought Iron Flamingos. Is by Donna Andrews, and it was so fun. It was just, I've mentioned it in my Nano vlogs, but just a typical mystery, not brilliantly written, but really well paced, and lots of characters, a lot of complexity. It was quite funny, which I very much appreciated, and took place at a sort of battle reenactment, Renaissance fair kind of weekend. So if you know anybody who's into that, or who would be into a mystery series about a blacksmith who is female, which is pretty unique, I tend to be a purist and start with book 1, so that was not book 1. But I couldn't resist the flamingos. So then I finally got around to reading a boxed set of books that my mother gave me. Oh goodness, I guess it was last Christmas. So Louise Penny is the author. Armand Gamache is the inspector. And these books take place in Quebec, so close to me in Vermont that I recognize the names of some of the towns. And they check weather that comes from Burlington, which is near me. And so that's really fun. But most mysteries, as I said with the flamingos, not always brilliantly written, and not always super in-depth or thought-provoking. But these books, Still Life was the first one, they make you feel stuff. They don't just take you on a plot-driven ride. they really get at the heart of the human condition, and the characters have so much depth, and the town is so well drawn and just really pulls you in, and the mysteries are great, and the writing is beautiful. So I can't tell you, I just read the next one, and then I read the next one immediately. Could not stop, could not put them down, and I would recommend them to anyone who both loves mysteries and loves, really good books. Someone who maybe has trouble balancing their love for a fun mystery with their love for well-written literature. And small caution, I think I have cried while reading all three of these, so maybe not for someone who would be annoyed by that. And finally, Flypaper Dreams by J. Kendall. Now, this is something completely different. It is neither a YA, fantasy or otherwise, nor a mystery. It is a short, contemplative, beautiful piece that alternates between childhood memories and a current timeline. And the thing that I think is spectacular is the segues from one to the other. It feels like a movie, like I could see it happening. It ties, everything feels linked together beautifully, even though it's alternating in time, which I think was very impressive. I would definitely recommend this to anyone who is interested in memoir, although this isn't technically that. Anyone who is interested in small town, rural life in the 1940s or 50s, and anyone who has dealt with an abusive relationship with their father. In the storyline, the main character, Zach, is in the current timeline finding out that his father has passed away, and in the memories is remembering some good times, some happy things, but also a lot of abuse, and trying to reconcile the sense of loss he's having in the current time, and the positive memories with the abuse that he endured, and the anger that he's now carrying toward a man who is dead and can't be held accountable anymore. It's very poignant, very thought-provoking, and absolutely lovely. I have this cover, but it also, there's a version with a cover that looks like a pink quilt. I think that's the one that I saw on Amazon when I went looking for it. I will leave a link to that below. At any rate, J. Kendall, I should give you full disclosure, is my husband's uncle, and he is a person who has come through a lot of hardship in his life, including being a cancer survivor, with this grace and humor and love and positivity that most of us can't endure a stub toe with. And so I feel like his perspective is really, really valuable. For the rest of December, my goal is to read Terry Pratchett's Bromeliad trilogy, if only to shut my husband up. He has been insisting for the last few years that I will love it and I should just read it now. Until next time, I am Moon Petrie. Consider getting one of these books for somebody you love, and consider getting it from your local bookstore. I know I just placed a special order with my local bookstore, and they said they'd have it in within the week, so there's plenty of time left.